So I just want to say hello and good morning to everybody. I want to thank you all for joining us here this morning, where we will be looking to discuss the recent addition of AI to the BrowserStack platform. We're going to look at what it looks like and how it'll work and how you can use it to increase speed, efficiencies, and quality from your work test flows. Quick introductions to start with. Gary, I might start with you.
Sure. Thanks, Mark. And hi, everybody. I'll echo what Mark said. Thanks for joining us today. And I'm the field CTO of BrowserStack. And broadly, what that means is I work with our customers on kind of the overall kind of strategy, vision, and architecture of their automation, their DevOps, and how BrowserStack fits into that ecosystem and how we can make testing better overall.
Thanks, Gary. And I am Mark Gallagher, so I'm the Regional Vice President at BrowserStack EMEA, where we look after the customer-facing field operations in the region. And I'll be moderating today's event. So if we move to the next slide, we just want to go through a couple of housekeeping items before we start. So today's session, we're scheduled for 45 minutes. We'll be muting all participants throughout the session to allow the flow go through and to allow us to keep time. There's a lot of content to cover today, so we want to be punctual and we want to be on time as best we can. We will, however, allow a dedicated slot towards the end for any Q&A that we have. We want to obviously this is a informational session, so we want to make sure that everyone comes away with as much information as possible. So please use the Zoom Q&A window in the Zoom section here. Send in your questions and we'll endeavor to answer them towards the end. The session, as we said, is 45 minutes, but me and Gary, if there is a lot of questions and there's things that need to be answered, myself and Gary can stay on towards the end. Just an FYI, the session will be recorded for future use, and that recording will be available to all attendees following completion of the webinar. So on the next slide, we'll just a quick overview of the agendas so you know what's coming. We'll be starting off with the evolution of testing, then the advancements of AI testing, and following that, the future of testing, AI as a teammate, and how that looks like especially from a BrowserStack perspective. We have our own perspective on these things, so we want to share that with you and what our vision is on BrowserStack AI, how we're going to help you do more in less time. And then privacy first from the AI features. So without further ado, I want to just hand it over to Gary, who can take it from here. Gary, over to you.
Thanks, Mark. And hi again, everybody. So let's just kick off. So I'm not going to dwell too much on the history of BrowserStack. I think a lot of people who are here are familiar with BrowserStack already. Where I want to zero in is kind of on the 2022 to present day kind of part, right? So we have been building a test platform for the last couple of years to try and be the kind of one-stop shop for all things testing. So that we've launched a ton of new products. We've launched observability, accessibility, and the ones we're going to talk about today primarily are test case management and low-code automation, because that's where we're really zeroing in on the AI features at this time. And we have a clear kind of vision of where we want to go between now and 2026 in terms of AI. And I'm going to be sharing some of that with you today. Some of it we're going to keep to ourselves because we got to keep some secrets. But we're going to be kind of being as open and transparent as we can with what's there now and what we plan to do in the future. So the key thing is, right, we're talking about what we're doing with AI. To talk about what we're doing with AI, we need to talk about the evolution of testing. So testing, and I've been in the industry for a long time. I'm not going to say how many years, I don't want to date myself, but I have been a manual tester for many years. I kind of went into the automated testing field, self-taught. I have a degree in software engineering, but I'm self-taught on Python and various other frameworks. And kind of moving into automated testing, you start to see the benefits, but you also see the kind of the fear and the apprehension that people have of like, oh, automated testing is going to take my job away. I'm not going to be able to do it anymore. I'm not going to have a job, etc. And it's always been about increasing efficiency, not about replacing the individual. So it's about freeing your time up to do more with less, and AI is kind of a similar conversation. So I find a lot of my conversations recently have been centered around that kind of idea that AI is going to take my job. That's never going to be the case. And as it relates to BrowserStack specifically, I am personally a big fan of it because it focuses on the assistive nature of AI and how it can be essentially like this, this robot teammate that you can have that helps you solve problems quicker, get things done faster, and free up your time to do more high-level things. Focus on the overall strategy of your testing and making your testing better and your overall quality go up. So you see the graph. You see that as we move from manual to automated, we saw like an uptick in overall productivity and in test coverage, and the cycle times going down, right? Now, the plan by 2026 is for a 50% increase in tester productivity. And a lot of that is going to be centered around AI, right? Because AI will do a lot of the heavy lifting and will allow you to just focus on organization, strategy, vision, and just basically making sure that the quality is, is key and is in place and ready to go and everything is good. So as we kind of talk about the AI of it all, we have to talk about the advancements in AI technology. So in the last kind of couple of years, it's kind of moved from machine learning, which is like, just it's predictive. So it's like you're not explicitly saying do this, but we're actually saying, hey, here's a prompt, do this kind of thing. And then deep learning, we moved to kind of like a subset of machine learning, and it's modeled on the human brain, right? And it uses what I'm sure we've all heard the term at this point of neural networks, right? Which are essentially a machine version of mapping the human brain. Not one-to-one, obviously, thankfully, but it is kind of trying to be as close to a human as possible. And then we have the newest one, which is generative AI, which is a big one for us because it basically allows you to process large amounts of data, generate content, and it recognizes patterns and stuff. And our LLMs or large language models or learning models, they kind of specialize in these language related tasks. So they're able to take a prompt and develop something very kind of detailed and complex from that prompt, essentially. You see it with things like Copilot on Microsoft and GitHub, where it's basically able to, read through all of your code, all of your logs, and tell you this isn't right, this isn't necessarily the best way to do this kind of thing, and really give you kind of good feedback on what you can do and how you can do it. You will see a poll question up on your screen in the Zoom window at the moment, just if you want to take some time to answer that, because we want to get people's feedback on how you as a person think that AI can really simplify your work the most. And there's a number of options there. If all of them apply, you can select all of the above as well. But we really just want to get people's feedback on that. And there'll be a couple of more questions as we roll through the different slides here. So with AI, just like when we moved from manual to automation, moving from automation into the AI sphere, new possibilities are kind of arising here for us, right? So the capabilities, like for example, if we want to generate code or content, for example, generating test cases, then that's something that we can do. If we want to refine our code, like refactor our code and kind of make it more efficient or extract things out into methods or page objects or what have you, then we can do that by refactoring it in the best possible way. We might want to say prioritize our test cases. So what do we consider to be a P1, a P2, a P3? We can have AI make recommendations that are based on previous runs, based on the data that's in the individual test cases, and based on things like Jira tickets and stuff. Then a big one that we've seen with Copilot and stuff as well is the issue diagnosis. So getting to the root cause of an issue. I'm sure we've got a lot of developers here today. We've all spent time debugging logs. We've all spent time looking at stack traces in our career, probably too much time. And we've also probably spent a lot of time on Stack Overflow. This will allow us to kind of speed up that process of debugging, finding the problem, solving the problem, and moving on. And that gives us more time back to actually focus on developing, writing tests, and basically getting, more done with less. And, like for example, we have our visual testing platform, Percy, which has had some kind of machine learning under the hood for years now around the kind of visual regression piece. But, if we wanted to kind of understand how to do visual testing in the best possible way, we can leverage AI by saying, hey, how do I do this, in a way that makes sense? What are the best practices? What are the kind of the best and most efficient ways to do visual testing? What should I test first? What should I skip? What should I potentially not test, etc.? So that's kind of, where we see good examples of that. So as I mentioned, AI is very much, at least in the kind of BrowserStack model that we're creating now, is very much focused on being the assistive nature. So being an assistant to a tester, to a developer, and helping them to do kind of the things, the repetitive things and the things that take up a lot of their time. They can kind of take that work off your plate and allow you to focus on more things. So testers, in the future, this is how we hope things will go. Will kind of drive the overall test strategy and allow kind of AI to do the heavy lifting around debugging and analysis and creation and so on. But there'll still be a human person at the end, a tester making the go no go decision. So a release is not going to happen because AI said it was okay. Somebody's going to have to go in and look at that and say, this is okay and it's good to go. But the kind of the bulk of the work and the heavy lifting will hopefully be done by AI and allow you to focus on the kind of the overall big picture of it all, right? So we see this as kind of like, there's three stages to it. There's configuring, there's the autonomous testing, which is all centered around the AI piece, and then verifying. And obviously, I mentioned at the start that BrowserStack has been building out our product kind of catalog over the last few years, and we have a lot of kind of things for that allow us to kind of focus on this. So when we start with the configuration, so it all starts with a prompt, just like ChatGPT and a lot of other tools, it starts with a prompt. And it takes in kind of all your information, and it can take in a lot of stuff. You can take in text, documents, you can put in like PRDs, you can put in like high-level design documents, and it can take all of that information and contextualize it and create something from that. And then in the autonomous testing phase, we kind of have our plan, create, execute, debug, which is kind of the standard for testing anyway. You start with your test plan, create your tests, execute your tests, debug your tests. We want AI to be able to do most, if not all of that. And then finally, on the verification piece, we can use our test observability platform, which has things like self-healing and has like, it can flag unique errors and flaky tests and various other things in there as well to allow you to kind of figure out things that are still kind of hanging around and also kind of see what was the history of this. Like in the last, like say, 10 times we've run these sets of tests, what was the output? How many times did certain tests fail, pass? What was the overall pass rate, the overall fail percentage? All of these things can be covered by observability, along with kind of, things like our self-healing that we can do via AI, but also allows you to flag if there was a unique error that only appeared one time, if there were common errors that happened a lot, if there were flaky tests that continuously failed, or tests that failed kind of like, say I have 10 tests, 3 of them fail, and 7 of them pass, and that continuously happens and there's a pattern, then we identify those as flaky and so on. So one thing we've seen is that our early investments in AI have really kind of shown us that we're onto something good here. We're really kind of seeing the fruit of our labor essentially. So with the requirements-based context of our test case management tool, we're seeing 90% faster test case creation driven by AI, which is great. And with our self-healing capabilities, we're actually seeing 40% fewer build failures, which is, it's fantastic. It really is. And it's only going to get better. That's the thing. We're gonna see more and more increases in this and in other areas as well as we move forward with our AI roadmap. So there's going to be another poll popping up now before we move on and with the next question. So we want to kind of get your feedback on what you see as the main barriers to AI adoption, right? So what do you see as kind of the biggest thing that's going to stop AI from becoming, heavily utilized within your organization? So I'm going to give people some time to kind of to answer that question, and because it is, it's an important question because people have concerns about it. People have kind of, questions. There are companies who are very heavily investing in it. There are companies who are taking a measured and cautious approach to it, and there are companies who are outright refusing to use it. So it's, it's important that we kind of gather that feedback and also emphasize the kind of the ways that we can solve for those problems that people might have. Okay, so I'm gonna move on anyway. So you continue to look at that, but I'm gonna move on to the next bit. So we've talked about what AI is doing in the larger context. Now we're going to talk about the kind of the browser stack side of things. How does BrowserStack use AI to kind of increase efficiency, increase productivity, and generally just make testing easier and more efficient, right? So to give you a bit of context, we kind of started back in 2011 when BrowserStack was formed as kind of from a compatibility testing use case. So it was about being able to test on specific browsers, right? Then we moved over to real devices, then we moved to automation, and we've kind of gone through a lot of different things, and we've kind of grown and matured over the time and responded to the way the industry is going. And I think that's important. And it's similar to what we're doing with AI now. We're responding to a need that exists in the current landscape of testing and DevOps and development in general. So we're trying to build the most comprehensive test platform that exists in the industry right now. And that's no mean feat. Like it's not an easy thing to do, but we've kind of come a long way even in the last kind of 12 to 24 months. And, you know, the idea is that this test platform, because we are in an industry now where testing isn't necessarily always done by the testers. We have kind of a shift left principle where, everybody can do everything and there are no specific tester roles. Developers can do testing, product managers can do testing, designers can do testing, everybody can do it. So we want to make sure that we're kind of catering to every possible person and every possible persona, right? So there is a big difference between doing testing and doing testing well, and that can sometimes be a problem for a shift left kind of organization because testing is a specialized kind of job in itself, and you need to be able to understand and have the right kind of mentality to be able to do it properly. You have to have an eye for these things. You have to, that's why people like designers and product managers can actually make very good testers because they already have that eye for detail, that eye for what works and what doesn't and stuff. Developers, very similar. They understand the features, so they know what to look out for. So it's kind of like, if you take all of those tools, you can make an army of really, really good testers from various different roles, right? So we want to kind of basically cater to all of those people, but we also have to cater to the varying levels of maturity. I'm sure we're all familiar with kind of the maturity curve that exists from teams that are fully manual to teams like, your Amazons and your kind of Metas of the world where they have like daily releases and they're running 500,000 tests a day and they're just kind of like super, super mature and they've taken years to get to that point and lots and lots of money too, obviously, because they're very large companies. But where we see most of our customers landing is right in the middle of that somewhere, where you're testing both automated and manual. You're kind of covering everything that needs to be covered. You're doing it as efficiently as possible, but there's still room for growth. And that's kind of where things like our AI platform can really help to move that curve upward for a lot of our customers and for a lot of our companies who are not customers currently as well. So the platform isn't kind of like, it doesn't lock you in. So you're not kind of going to have to use every product in the catalog. We kind of look at it as like if I go to McDonald's, I can order anything I want off the menu. I can pick and choose what I want, right? So we want to do the same thing. It's bespoke. So if you just need accessibility testing and test case management, you can have that. That's fine. You don't need visual testing and API testing on top of it. If you only need to do manual testing, you can use our live and our app live platforms and you don't have to use anything else. We would like if you were using other ones, and we would like if you were moving from a manual to a more automated approach. And that's something that I work with our customers on is how do we move to that point? And the biggest thing that I've come across when having these discussions is the biggest barrier to moving from manual to automation is time. The enemy on the wrist. We all know. We don't have time to get to a stage where we can do automation, where we can upskill our people to do it. We don't have the budget to hire people to do it, straight away. And this is where I see AI becoming a kind of a difference maker, in that if we get to a stage where we can leverage AI to create automated tests that work and that are linked to everything that we need from, from code collaboration to debugging to observability to monitoring, all of these things can be done. It just makes it so that you don't necessarily need to have the skills to do it if you have the tools to do it. And time becomes a non-issue because AI is going to make everything a lot faster. It's going to make everything happen a lot quicker, and it will auto-generate a lot of the things that you would spend a lot of time doing. Right now, towards the end of the session today, we're going to be showing you a demo, and I'm going to be talking to you about it, and you'll see an example of that happening. And I think that will kind of show what I've been talking about in an actual context of how BrowserStack is approaching AI, and I think that's going to be good for people to see as well. So what we've tried to do with our AI platform is have a unified data store in a safe and secure environment. Now, one of the things that comes up a lot is the issue of privacy. And before we kind of go through this, I want to just kind of make it very clear that we don't store data that we use to train this AI model from any of our customers. That's not how we're doing it. We are simply taking the information and giving you back the context. And none of that information is going to be used to make the model more learned or anything. It's just allowing you to give it as much information as possible so that the output is as detailed as possible, right? So with that said, what we can do, and this all goes back to the plan, create, execute, debug, so the actual kind of like testing phase, we can take in product release documents, we can take in test plans, cases, we can take your automated tests, your history of your test runs, your website analytics, test metrics, and any defects that you have. All of that can be kind of fed into our AI platform and allow you to basically create tests, create kind of like documentation, give you output on what's potentially not going well, what could be better, different things like that, and just give you overall better context around kind of how your testing should look, right? And the more information you give it, the more accurate and the more reliable the responses will be. And that's that's the main thing here. So we want to kind of make sure that it actually works. We don't want it to just be give it a prompt, the prompt might make sense, and then it gives you back kind of a generic answer, which I think we've all seen examples of that out there. That's what we're trying to avoid. But like with anything, the more information you give, the more you're going to get back. So going back to the privacy kind of concerns for a second. So the data that is provided by customers to get back the various different pieces of data that they want, there's no crossover between our customers. So if customer A sends over like all the test plans and documents that they have, all their automated tests, that's only going to be available inside their data store. So they are the only ones that will be able to use that, right? And no account data, no kind of like, sensitive information is shared with the AI tools. So that's very important as well. Like your data is only used to generate relevant content. It's never going to be used to kind of take information or to share information or anything like that. And this is the important thing for me as well, because I'm very much, I like having control of the data that I have. So you have full control over your data and where you want to use it and how you want AI to basically interact with it, essentially. And a big thing as well is transparency. So, we will be very transparent on how each of these features works, and we can go as in depth as need be. We have a huge team working on AI from the development and product perspective, and between myself, Mark, and the team at BrowserStack in EMEA, we can work with them and even bring them onto calls to talk about it in great detail to give you comfort and the knowledge that you need in order to feel comfortable with it. And we also provide transparency on the models that we use and how the data kind of flows between the different components. So, it's important that if you're giving your information to kind of like to a machine, you might want to know how that machine is going to interpret that data, how it's going to use that data, and how it's going to overall just use your data. And really, that's what we're going to provide you because it's important. So now what we're going to do is we're going to move over to a demo of things. So I'm going to slide over here. So what you'll see here is this is a Jira ticket, very, very kind of straightforward Jira ticket of a successful and failed login. So this is telling us that we need to go to a certain website, enter in the correct username and password and log in. We need to verify that a heading appears to make sure that we've logged in successfully. We would then want to go back to the main page and enter in some incorrect information and verify that the correct error message is displayed, right? So this is just a Jira ticket. It's and nothing else, right? So what we want to do is we want to show how BrowserStack AI can really help you to create test cases that can be used then for manual testing, and as I'm going to show you as well, in some cases, automated testing. So using the BrowserStack plugin, we can specify, and it links into our test case management tool. So you can specify a particular folder that you want to put it in, which you'll see there is AI demo 1/manual. And that's gonna be where they get stored when we add them in. I've clicked the generate button, so it's now going through and it's looking at the ticket. It's going to take the title and the description, and it's going to generate test cases that are relevant for that. And it's not going to automatically add them to test case management, because if you're not comfortable with them, if you don't think that they're necessarily correct, you can discard them. So we can review each test case and add it before we store it in test case management. So you're not ending up with a bunch of test cases just sitting in a folder that aren't relevant. You're only adding what's necessary here. So and you see here, this is our test case management tool, for example. So there's 0 test cases in there currently, which is how we want it. We wanted to have nothing in there, so it's completely fresh. That's an interesting message as well, is that it also, in that folder, if we already had test cases that were similar to it, it would use those to provide extra context around it. So you see here, it's provided me with 3 test cases: a successful login, and a failed login with the incorrect password, and a failed login with the incorrect username, or a non-existent account in this case, right? And that's exactly in this, we're using a simplistic example, but I can tell you from experience that it can handle more complex examples as well. And this is exactly what I wanted to see. And I can now review each one and add it, or I can remove it. You can also see that once they've been added, you can see when the last run happened, and you can get a link to test case management where that is shown as well. So you see here, it has a description, preconditions, and it has all the steps. You can add more if you feel like there's more that needs to be added. You can also change the title and generate new steps with AI as well, right? So I've added the one at the bottom, the successful login. So when I refresh my test case management page, and I go into my test cases, there's one in there now, and there it is. So now I have one test case that I've added from a Jira ticket. Now I have a second one here, failed login with incorrect password. And the final one is the non-existent account. And they have IDs, so you'd be able to track each one as well. And it'll show you the status of the last run and the link as well, so that you can go directly to test case management. So it's basically, there's a connection point between both Jira and test case management. And that's important, because what we're going to be seeing now is that the relationship is bidirectional. So it's not just I have a Jira ticket and I can create test cases from it. You can also go, I have a test case and I want to create a Jira ticket from it. So if I have a test case and I want to have like a task or a story in my sprint to go and say, test the login, for example, then I can do that. And you can generate it there like that as well. So if you've generated test cases via AI in test case management, you can then create Jira tickets based on those as well. So it goes both ways, essentially. And you'll see there it's added a new ticket, Can6, and it's obviously it's linked to my own Cloud Jira instance. And I'm also going to use the AI generation to generate the rest of the test case based on that title. So it basically will take the context of the title. You can also add a description to make it more fluid. And you'll see there it's generated the preconditions, it's generated steps, and it allows you to kind of to see everything. And because we've linked the Jira ticket to it, once we finish the creation, we'll go back over to Jira and we'll see it there then as well. So now you see Can6 is there, and that's the ticket that we created. And in the BrowserStack plugin, you'll see there's a linked test case there, which is exactly the one that we just created. And that kind of shows you that there's kind of like, that bidirectional relationship exists because of that, right? The next thing I'm going to talk about is our low-code automation tool. So if we look at this as kind of a journey from point A to point B, we have started with a Jira ticket that is basically testing the login. We've created a bunch of test cases from that. Now we can create a low-code automation test in our low-code automation tool from those test cases. So this is kind of where I see the power of AI being a big thing here. You have a simple Jira ticket, and in the space of 5 minutes, you have taken that, you've created a bunch of test cases that can be used to test that you didn't have to write yourself. And you've now been able to create a low-code automation test without having to run the flow manually yourself. So most of us will be familiar with low-code automation tools. You have to basically, like Selenium IDE, for example, you have to run the flow yourself. So you go through all the different steps and you then save that and you can use it again in the future. That still takes time. And if you have multiple tests, like 50, 100 tests, you still need to do all of those tests yourself manually, and that takes a lot of time. This is allowing you to do it without that effort being spent. And that's huge, because again, it goes back to time being the biggest enemy of growth. And this is allowing you to get all that time back. So I could take a Jira ticket. So I had an example recently of a Jira ticket that had, a lot of different information in it. It had like definition of ready, definition of done. It had a bunch of given, when, then acceptance criteria in a table, and a bunch of other information that was pertinent to the tests. And from that, we generated 39 test cases. Those 39 test cases were generated in under 2 minutes. Then we took those, we added them to test case management. We can then automate all of those in low-code automation. Given the correct information, you might have to add some context to it depending on how the output looks, but you will get the information back. And you'll see here, I'm in our low-code automation tool, for example, and once it refreshes, so you see there, it's added a new test here, successful login. And when you run it, you'll see that it's going to run the entire flow from start to finish without you ever having to run it manually yourself. So it's going to this website, it's entering in the credentials that we asked it to enter in. It's then logging out and doing it again for good measure. And that's exactly what we asked it to do. And that works exactly the way it should. And that's great. So just to kind of recap what we've seen here. So we've seen one Jira ticket, create 3 test cases. Those 3 test cases then leveraged to create low-code automation tests. That was done. This is a 10-minute video. The actual effort in that was about 5 minutes, and then the rest was kind of waiting and editing and so on. So say 5 minutes to create a low-code automation test from a test case that you didn't even write yourself. Extrapolate that out to say 50 test cases. So that's going to take you, maybe like an hour to do. And, those kinds of savings and that kind of time investment is so minimal that there's actually no excuse not to do it, really. And it's kind of like if it's done correctly, and that's where the team at BrowserStack comes in. We have our solutions engineers who can help out. I deal a lot in the kind of the AI pieces as well, so I'm often on these calls as well. And it's really kind of, it's if we're doing it correctly and we're using it right and everything is set up correctly and we enable our customers in the right way, we see this as a huge kind of maturity grower over the next 12 months. And when we talk about kind of putting it all together, the combination of test case management and low code automation is a really powerful tool to help the less mature, less automation ready teams get to an automated state. And I didn't even mention a couple of things. One is a newer feature where you can upload a document, like a PDF document. That can be a PDF of a Jira ticket. It can be a PDF with a bunch of different data in it, and that'll give you back all of the test cases in one go. There's also the fact that you can, because a lot of people have kind of talked about the idea of vendor lock-in. So the low-code automation test being stuck in our low-code automation tool and not being able to be used anywhere else. We now have the ability to export those as actual automation code, and it's surprisingly well put together. Yeah, I'm a stickler for good code, so I'd be very critical of it, but it's very, very good and it's very well put together. And that allows you to take that code that was created from a low-code automation test that you didn't even have to run yourself, really. And then you can use that in an actual automation framework, whether it's JavaScript, Java, C#, whatever you're using. And then you can run it in your CI/CD platform and really kind of start to grow more and more efficient over time. So once you bring in DevOps and kind of release strategies and stuff, efficiency just goes up even more. So there's a lot in there, a lot to take in. And I know we've had a lot of questions as well. So I'm going to pass it back to Mark now just to kind of cover up the end, and we'll start launching into the Q&A, and I'll try and answer as many questions as we can as well. So over to you, Mark.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Gary. We'll start off with a few of these. We're trying to get through as many as possible. Some of these are related to action items as we were progressing through through the presentation. Obviously, we couldn't answer them at the time, but we'll endeavor to go back and answer them as where we can. First one, Dan, had a great question. How much is this going to cost? Is it included in our standard pricing?
So the simple answer is it actually. So this is the kind of a common question, and I might give my stock answer. AI itself is not a product. So AI at BrowserStack is not a product unto itself. It's a feature of our existing products. So, if you pick up test case management today, you will have access to the AI features in test case management. If you pick up low code automation, you will have access to the automation or the AI features in low code automation. So it's really just, it's helping to bolster our existing tools and make them more efficient and also make them more valuable as well. So I think, the cost is based on what you want to use, really, at the end of the day. So if you want to use test case management, it will be the cost of test case management. If you want to use it for low code automation, it's the cost of low code automation, which Mark is the sales guy. He can deal with the money end of it. I don't deal with that part. But the simple answer is it doesn't cost anything. It's really just about what products you want to use.
Right. Thank you, Gary. Michaela had a question. It was on the slide of advancements in AI technology at the time. Just inquiring if we've any recommended resources to deep dive into machine learning, deep learning, and generative AI.
So yeah, so there's lots of different resources out there. I can share some kind of some links after the session. Obviously I can't go and grab them now, but I can post them after the session to I can send them over to you, Mihaela, if you want, and to anybody else who's interested as well.
Perfect. We'll follow up with that with participants where it's applicable. So what is the value add of generative AI test cases the BrowserStack is offering in comparison with ChatGPT or similar tools?
So that's an easy one, I think. So it goes back to Dan's question in a way, because it's if you're using our products for test case management, for example, right? So if you're using TCM, BrowserStack's TCM product, then generating test cases inside the tool is much more efficient than going out to ChatGPT, getting doing the prompt there, getting the answers, and then copy pasting them back into test case management. It's about having a kind of a single source, a one-stop shop where you can just generate the test cases. And also, because you're doing it inside the tool itself, it's going to use the historical context of other test cases in that folder and in that project, and also historical runs, pass fail rates and stuff to generate the most accurate test cases possible, which you won't be able to do in an external tool if you're doing it that way. So that the value is really just in if you're using the tool and you're leveraging AI as well, then doing them in the same tool just makes sense because it's going to have all of that context to derive answers from.
All right. Thanks, Gary. Blair was mentioning about AI. He was interested in it for post testing. So results, weeding out flaky tests, working on what is real, what's a fail. So have we covered that, Gary? Is that something
Yeah,
you can?
so to an extent, but I'll do it anyway. So it's a great question, Blair. The so I talked a bit about our test observability platform today, and that is using AI and machine learning for identifying flaky tests, unique errors, what is an environment issue versus an automation failure versus a different type of issue. So it's kind of giving you the ability to kind of skip the debugging and just kind of go, okay, well, based on context of all of my previous runs and this run where it failed, it's an environment issue, or it's a genuine failure. It's a unique error we've never seen before, or it's an error that has come up 10, 75 times before, who knows? So the observability platform has all of that built in already that allows you to kind of do more in less time, which is kind of the key thing here. So yeah, the simple answer is our observability platform kind of covers a lot of what you're asking for there, and it's only going to grow in the next kind of 12 to 18 months as well.
Perfect. Thanks, Gary. Just a time check for everybody. We are actually on time at the moment, but as mentioned before, myself and Gary can stay on for the next 15 minutes. As I'm looking at the open questions, there's currently 63 left. I don't think we will get to all of them on this webinar, but we will endeavor to answer them afterwards. We make sure that any questions that you have will be followed up. So you're more than welcome to stay on as we work our way through these questions. So Michaela again, Gary, is asking, what is your trust level into AI to refactor code?
So there's two answers to that one. There's my answer and there's the corporate answer. So no, I think in all seriousness, I think it's quite good and it's getting better every day. So I've used pretty much all the tools that allow you to do refactoring and debugging of some sort. And the big hitters like your GitHubs and Microsofts are really good at refactoring code and understanding it because they are pooling from a large data set. And, like, people have been writing code and kind of refining code for years. And Microsoft and GitHub and hopefully us as we mature more in the AI space will be able to use that context to build up a very high level of quality in code refactoring. So I think my trust level would be medium to high at the moment.
Perfect. Thank you, Gary. So another question just around various different approaches and frameworks. So I'm currently using Selenium POM approach for the last 2.5 years, but in the job market, to compete in the job market in automated testing, should I use Selenium, PyTest, Cypress Tools, or Playwright? What is your take on this?
Okay, this is a great question that has absolutely nothing to do with AI, but I love it anyway. So it's I think that as someone who started out in Python and then moved to Java and has a background in C sharp, I've run the gamut between all of them at this point. But I kind of tend to lean where the industry is going, right? So Cypress is kind of dwindling a little bit. Playwright is the big thing at the moment. It's the one that a lot of teams are moving towards, and we're seeing a lot more of. Selenium's the granddaddy of them all. It's been around so long, and it's always going to have a place. Like I've seen so many think pieces on Selenium is dying, here's why, and I've never seen a compelling reason why Selenium is going to go away. I think having a good kind of not necessarily expert knowledge, but like at least kind of a base understanding of all of them is is good to have. The underlying kind of like the Selenium POM approach is the same as the page object model approach in Playwright, in Cypress, in WebDriver IO, in any different platform. The underlying principle is the same. It's about refactoring into a page object kind of class to allow you to reuse the tests, or sorry, to reuse the functions and reuse the variables as you see fit. So I think just having kind of like a base understanding of each one is good and will make you more hireable. And then as you're looking at different job postings, if they say, oh, we focus on PyTest, then you need to do your homework on PyTest and be ready to answer any questions around specific PyTest things. But you should also understand the fundamentals of the page object model, the fundamentals of locator strategies, and the fundamentals of what a good test looks like, because those things you know, are standard across most frameworks and most languages at this point. So I hope that answers the question.
Perfect. Thanks, Gary. Chris is asking about data storage. So where is the data stored? Is it possible to choose data residency for everything in BrowserStack, even the AI side of things?
So as far as I know, the data itself isn't really stored. It's just used and then removed, so that we don't store the data anywhere, essentially. For anything that does need to be stored, it is stored in our data centers, and it is fully compliant with all regulations, and it is privacy first. For specifics, I would actually need to check with our internal teams. So what I'll do is I'll leave the answer there, and I'll get you a more detailed answer offline, Chris, and I will send that over to you, kind of like the full kind of detailed answer from our internal team.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Gary. One question that came up a lot, actually, we had one of our poll questions, got a lot of feedback from people, so thank you very much for that. It was around, what do you consider the biggest barrier to adopting AI in testing? A lot of people put in security, that wasn't on there, so we'll include that for again. But questions around security as well, Gary. What's your take on security from a BrowserStack AI perspective?
So I think, we talked about being privacy first focused. I think it's really just about making sure that people know that the data is not being used to train the model. The data is not being shared among customers, it's not being shared with any third parties, and that it's really like it's it's a silo. So when you upload your data to to get your, to get your context, to create your tests, to do whatever you need to do, if you're uploading like a design document or kind of like a sensitive document in order to get context back in the form of test cases or automation tests, that's kind of, it exists in a singular pipe that is only accessible by you. And then once it's done, it's gone. So once you have what you need, we don't need the data anymore. It's gone. So it's really like security is of the utmost concern, not just on the AI side, like it's always been a thing for us, because we're dealing with, on the app side, when people have to upload their apps to us, there are things like certificates that need to be dealt with and stuff like that. So security's always been of critical concern for us. And we need to make sure that we're adhering to every standard, that we're making people feel comfortable. And, we even have like a dedicated security team at BrowserStack that handles all of this stuff, and makes sure that if a customer isn't fully comfortable with it, that we can bring them in and kind of get them to kind of give the full kind of breakdown and full download of, how they can feel comfortable, essentially.
Perfect. Thanks, Gary. Question from my old friend Dave McAllister. Wants to know, what governance or safe AI practices and policies do we have in place?
You know, I actually don't know the answer to that question, so I'm going to have to follow up with our AI team to get the answer to that. It's a great question as well.
Yeah,
It's something that should be kind of we should be very transparent about. But yeah,
absolutely.
I'll get that answer and come back. I can give it to you, Mark, and you can go since you seem to know Dave anyway.
Yeah, yeah. Perfect. Richard, a question around, will AI be implemented with your Percy offering? I feel visual testing is a game changer, and AI in the space would be great. If your AI solution is not learning from my specific context, what makes it different from using ChatGPT?
So I think that goes back to a question that we covered already, which is that it's, you know, if it's used inside our applications, it's going to use the kind of the data that's already existing inside there. So in terms of test cases, if there's already test cases that exist, then it will use those to create a more kind of a more fleshed out answer or a more fleshed out test case or automation test. It can use historical data to identify potential issues. So, if you use ChatGPT and then kind of come over to BrowserStack and put that data in there, it's not going to be the same. It's not going to be as detailed, and it's not going to have the kind of the it's not going to do the pattern recognition that our tool will do based on the data that exists in the tool already. That's why it's kind of such a big part of the tool itself rather than being just an external thing that we use to kind of feed into it.
Perfect. Thanks, Gary. Daniel had a question specifically around the fintech area. So, organizations like the FCA and the Financial Ombudsman will need visibility of associated risks when technology of this nature is implemented. I imagine this would be the case in a variety of contexts, such as healthcare and defense too. So, do we have any insights into that area, Gary?
Yeah, so I actually recently had some conversations with an insurance company based in Europe, and they actually have, and a lot of companies seem to have this now, they have an AI council internally, and they deal with things like governance, things like, what Daniel is talking about here. And we kind of like what we do in that case is we connect them with our AI product teams to kind of go over, what the overall kind of um the way of working is so that they can feel comfortable. So security with especially with fintech and with I think healthcare and defense was mentioned there as well. Like they're going to be very much about the security of it all and data privacy and all that kind of stuff. So that's why we connect kind of those teams with our internal security and AI teams to make sure that they're comfortable with everything that's going on and that they know that there are no associated risks involved in using our tools and our platform.
Perfect. Thank you, Gary. Next one, we've had a number of questions around various different integrations, so I might group these
Mhm.
together. Some specific ones where do we have anything for ClickUp integration, Azure DevOps integrations, and just integrations in general, Gary, if we can talk around that for a few moments.
Yeah. So, I mean, what we've seen today is we've seen low code automation, we've seen test case management, we've seen the Jira piece, which is more kind of tied to test case management. I think in the next kind of like 2 years, we'll see this kind of go over to our core products. So we'll see it kind of move into our automated products. To somebody was asking about Percy earlier, I see it kind of moving into the Percy space. Obviously, I can't mention specifics at this time, so I'm kind of, talking in hypotheticals, but the kind of the gains that we've seen in productivity from using AI, personally, I can see those kinds of workflows being kind of moved over into our core products and helping to boost productivity even more. So, I would say on our automate platforms, on Percy, on test observability, we'll see more and more use cases for AI happen in the next kind of 12 to 24 months.
Sounds good. How can AI-driven automation tools handle dynamically changing UI elements?
So that's to do with self-healing. So our test observability tool has the self-healing feature, which allows us to basically identify that, say, I'll give you an example, right? So I've done 10 runs of my regression suite in the past couple of weeks. The first nine were all perfectly fine, but in the 10th one, it failed because of an element that didn't exist, that was there, that's different from the one before. Our test observability tool will be able to recognize that that is a changed element and flag it as such, to enable you to basically go, here's the video, here are the logs, here's the information, send that to your developer, your web developer, whoever it might be. Or if you're, if you are the developer, you're able to identify it straight away and go, oh, okay, I need to update that. And they go on the update the automation script. In the future, I'm hoping that we see like AI can actually implement those fixes, automatically. So you don't have to do it yourself. It identifies and then fixes, but that's kind of a maybe at this point.
Perfect. Okay, thank you. We probably just got time for about two more questions. We got 2 more minutes. And again, if your questions in here, we have a number that haven't been answered. We will endeavor to follow up with answers if we don't do them live. Is it possible for the AI generation tool to be expanded by scanning URLs to generate test cases based on the assets on the page?
So that is something that I believe is planned at the moment, and is something that's going to be happening in the near future.
Okay. A last question. Which framework is the low-code automation tool using?
It's proprietary, so it's not a specific tool. It's a proprietary kind of under the hood thing that even I don't know, because they kind of keep that secret thing. It's like the 11 herbs and spices in KFC. It's, state secret. But it can be exported in various languages. So that's something to keep in mind. So you can export it as a JavaScript automated test, a Java one, etc.
That's great. There's actually a lot of questions about low code automation, so I think that's answered a few of them. So I think that has us up on time, folks. I want to just thank everybody again for attending this morning. We hope it was beneficial. We hope it was useful. Okay, thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for your time this morning. Have a good day.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.